Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Social Hotelier podcast with me, Sam-Erik Ruttmann. Today, welcome a powerhouse of leadership, decision making, and emotional intelligence, an award winning keynote speaker who has captivated audiences around the world. With 20 years of corporate experiences and groundbreaking approach to leadership and customer experience, she has transformed the way professionals make impactful choices. My guest is Sylvie Di Giusto. Stay with us until the end as we uncover the secrets behind her success and how you too can harness the power of choice to shape your future. So, welcome, Sylvia. Thanks very much for joining today.
Thank you very much, Sam-Erik. It's always an honor to be on great shows, but it's an extra honor when I can be back home in Europe. Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. Well, I think the things that when you say back home, does that mean Austria originally, or how is it for you?
It's complicated. I always say it's complicated. You hear a Spanish grandmother, an Italian grandfather, a French father, and an Austrian mother. But life brought me to the United States, where I'm currently located in beautiful Florida, in sunny Tampa.
Wonderful. Well, I have to say, Helsinki is not the most sunniest place in the world, but I think today was a good day because I think the weather powers knew that we're going to have a podcast today. So the sun has been bright and shiny all day. So it puts me also in a very kind of cheerful mood because sun makes that to me.
Wonderful.
But just to perhaps for the audience to get an understanding, if you could tell me about your professional experience and the journey that has taken you, that you now are known as the international 3D immersive holographic keynote speaker.
Mhm, mhm. Well, after a long corporate career in Europe, I decided to fulfill my lifelong dream to live in the United States, left everything behind literally overnight and moved with a newborn on my lap to the United States and decided to change the sites from booking speakers to becoming a speaker. And, for around 12 years, I did what every other speaker did. Same old. Opening conferences, closing conferences, telling a few stories, clicking through my slide decks, delivering a few facts and figures. But I have always been somebody who likes to think outside of the box and to disrupt patterns. And one day I was at a Cirque du Soleil show and I saw out of a sudden horses running from the left to the right side. And I wondered, were they real? Was this an illusion? Where did they come from? Where did they go to? And I realized it was holographic technology that they used. And I researched a little bit the 3D or the holographic technology and quickly realized that holographic technology, unfortunately, is always just flat. It's two-dimensional. But I always had this vision of something three-dimensional. I wanted to go into a brain. I wanted to take my audience members into a brain. So afterwards, it only took 4 years, like with many innovations, a lot of ups and downs and failures and trials and errors and 3 steps forward, 2 steps back until I launched the world's 3D or the world's first 3D immersive experience, which means now my stage becomes a three-dimensional environment where I have a brain surrounding me, where I create environments rather than just showing slide decks to my audiences, and where I take them on this beautiful, magical, memorizing journey I am so blessed to share with my audience members.
Well, I have to admit, my next question is probably is too obvious, but when you step to the stage and I meet your audience for the first time, how do you grab their attention and ensure that they stay engaged without distractions like mobile devices or looking at their
Mhm.
SMSs and so on? But I think that you probably have answered the question, but tell me anyway.
I truly believe that speaking is never about the speaker. It's always about the audience. This is one of my core beliefs. And when I ask other speakers, for example, a very common question in our industry, what do you speak about? And 9 out of 10 speakers respond to me, I speak to audiences about XYZ. Then I already know it's the wrong approach, because I always say I speak with audiences. It's like a dance between me and the audience. And for that, I always want them to be part of my keynotes, not just, participants that are passive listeners. And so I use technology to do that, not just for the sake of technology, but the technology allows me to make them part of the experience. I also use a lot of moments of surprise, because the brain just loves novelty. And I create this wait, what just happened moments in the same way that I saw horses running across the stage. Some things happen on stage where they think, wait, what just happened? I changed my outfits, for example, magically, to showcase to them how powerful somebody's visual appearance is. I eliminate my accent on stage with the help of technology. I have an elephant crossing on my stage. I break expectations from the very first second. I don't have an introduction. How often did you go to a conference, Sam-Erik, and were really moved by a speaker's introduction, listening to all the credentials that the speaker has and all the books? I just break those patterns and grab the attention of the audience in different ways.
Wonderful. I was watching a YouTube where you came on stage and you basically asked the audience immediately, in one word, describe what you think of me, or what is your first impression.
Yes.
And people look kind of puzzled that this was something they were really caught by surprise. And I think this probably is one of the ways that you are get people alerted to what to become next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The comfort zone, I always say, is a very dangerous place. It
Yeah.
is where we don't grow and where we stagnate. So I always take them also a little bit to the edge of their comfort zone, but still in a safe environment. And
Yes.
people actually enjoy this. There is another part of that after I ask them what they think of me, I send them around and let them label each other, which means they really physically walk through the room and have to put labels on their back what they think of each other. And the first moment, I always hear them gasp. They are so fearful to go through this physical experience of being labeled. And after 5 minutes, I'm telling you, they have so much fun because they feel so safe in this room that it's difficult for me to get them back into their seats, because they want more labels, more labels. Who
Yeah.
doesn't want to know who they are really perceived by others? Who wouldn't want to have that information from their back, knowing what others really think about you when they think about you?
Of course. If you look back about your career that you have had as a public speaker, and also you have booked other speakers, have you always been confident on the stage, or was there a time that you have to overcome certain personal issues, or fear of being on a stage, or how did you go about that? If you had, can you just share with the audience who are many of the people who are listening to the audience who are listening to this podcast, they have reluctancy to not be on the stage, but they have reluctance to be in front of a camera. Maybe you can share just your
Absolutely.
personal view on this.
Yes, absolutely. Let me share a personal story. Um, Years ago, I lived in New York City. It was at the beginning of my speaking career, and I was utterly concerned about my accent. But one day, somebody from a TV show, a producer from a TV show in New York, called me and asked me if I would be willing to come into their studio and be part of a TV show for that evening and comment on the public persona of a politician. And being at the beginning of my career, I didn't ask many questions. I said, sure, hopped into a cab, instantly drove into that studio. I didn't know much about the politician, quickly Googled his name. And I found myself in that studio in between all those well-spoken political experts who all had this picture perfect US American English. They used words so complicated, so sophisticated, so eloquent that when in the evening I watched the show and I heard myself in between those well-spoken political experts, I was so embarrassed that I didn't even tell anybody that I was on the show. But then they invited me again and again and again, and I somehow became a regular guest on that show. And every single time when I watched it, I hated it. So at the holiday party, uh, over a glass of wine, I approached the TV producer or the producer of this show, and I shared this insecurity with him. And he looked at me and pointed at my mouth and said, that's the reason why we invite you again and again. Because first, you sound like an international expert. And second, you say things so simple that every single viewer in front of the TV understands you, while they don't understand the political experts. So I came to realize that one of my biggest insecurities is actually one of my biggest superpowers. And nowadays, I realize that my accent is actually such a unique selling point here living in the United States because, first of all, it's something exotic. And second, most of the time, I find myself in front of international audiences. So I attract a specific market here and a specific client who is actually looking for somebody who is not the cookie cutter, typically American speaker. And maybe you too, if you're tuning in and listening, maybe you too have something you might be insecure or worried about, and you can actually turn it into your superpower.
That's a very nice story about your life, and I think this is a kind of a learning for everyone. I incidentally had my own similar experience being for 7 years in the United States and as a trainee, and they put me in front by a buffet to cut the roast beef for the customers, and I never hardly had held a knife. I never had a chef's uniform on, but the reason they had me there was because of my accent and not my skill, and that's what people enjoyed it. So I can relate perfect to that, even though it's a little bit of an absolutely different situation. But I think that kind of touches people when you have something unique that grabs the audience and also attracts people. So on. Yeah. Is there a difference? I mean, we talked earlier about that you have a presence on a stage, but then when you are meeting an audience digitally, is there something different that you in your approach that you take when you speak on a digital? You are in a studio environment, but if you are, let's say,
So
a TED talk or one of those, how do you go? Anything differently that you approach on that?
Yeah. So if you present virtually or as a leader, you meet with your team or you have a presentation online, I always want you to remember that the screen takes away, I would guess, around 20 to 30% of your energy level and your enthusiasm and your passion. And even if it feels kind of weird for you being alone in your office or in some sort of studio or wherever you are, you really need to tune up your energy level. Because between you and the recipient, those 20 to 30% just get lost, which means you need to speak louder, you need to speak faster, you need to use your facial expressions more, you need to use your hand gestures more. Of course, you don't want to get crazy with your hands, but everything that you usually do in a room, you need just to express more and more intentionally, because through the screen, otherwise it seems just less engaging. Lean in more, sit up more, just show way more energy and enthusiasm that you would do when you would be one-on-one in a room, because otherwise, through the digital cords between you and I, it gets lost.
Yeah, very good. Those are some great tips. And you just reminded me to sit more straight, which I start to do now here in front of you also. So I was thinking about digital presence, because many of us are in front of an audience, or we are on Teams calls or Zoom calls, where in this world where this digital presence is so crucial, how can, in this case, hospitality leaders balance the authenticity with professionalism in their online footprint, meaning that there's an authentic. If you meet a person, that's one thing, but now you're meeting digitally. You mentioned already certain tips, but is there anything else that one should be aware of when you're in those kind of maybe important meetings, like on Zoom, for instance?
Yeah. You know, Sam-Erik, you're not going to like my answer. Because when it comes to authenticity, I always say authenticity is a lie. And has become the most overused word, especially when it comes to leadership. And the reason why is because it has been misused in so many instances. Authenticity here very often gets used as you just do you just be you. But as a leader, you have a specific role, you have a specific responsibility. You represent yourself, you represent a team, you represent a brand, you represent an organization. You represent the hospitality industry as an entity. And I always say authenticity only exists in these specific roles. I can be authentic as a mother at home. I can be authentic as a wife to my husband. I can be authentic as a speaker on stage, but I'm very different authentic as a leader to my team, for example. So I believe that authenticity exists in those different roles, but there is no such thing that one authenticity that I can just do in all roles, whatever I want to do. Just imagine I would speak with my husband the way I speak with my audiences, or I would speak with my children the way I speak with my team, and vice versa, right? So first I would encourage you to define for yourself, what does authenticity and professionalism really mean for you as a leader in hospitality when it comes to your digital presence? And who do you represent there? Yourself, but you also represent your team and the brand you work for. And then beyond the virtual interaction you have in meetings, think of your social media profiles. What do we find there? Think of the emails that you send out that can be forwarded and forwarded. And right now, somebody could read an email that you sent as part of your digital footprint that wasn't even meant for them because somebody else forwarded it. Think of what shows up about you on page 1 on Google. And not just in terms of links, but also when I click on the tab with the images, when I click on the tab with the videos. So there is this digital footprint that you consciously left behind. And then there is also this digital presence that you unconsciously leave behind in between the lines. Things that we often notice about others, but are very willing to ignore about ourselves. How often are you online? How often do you post? We all have that one friend where we think, oh, wow, you are online a lot. Do you even go to work? Right? How outdated are your profiles? Is that picture of you on LinkedIn even somehow still accurate, or do you totally look different in life when I meet you now 20 years later? So keep in mind that your digital presence has become far and wide, and nowadays, unfortunately, will determine if you are ever able to meet somebody in person. It has become your first impression in terms of the really first impression, because people usually check you out first online and then decide if it's worth interacting with you or not.
Wonderful. I mean, these are just some, I call them golden nuggets that one has to take care of. And I particularly like your points about online presence digitally, because we have many of us have a social media presence in Instagram and Facebook, and Facebook has the friends from the childhood, and we are kidding around. We're showing goofy pictures. And then we go to LinkedIn, we look super professional, and we have that corporate look. And then you go to Instagram, where it's a little bit different. We show our pictures from the holidays. And you're so right. People will determine pretty much who you are based on those things. And you have to be so careful. There has to be somebody who is going to help you to help one to kind of screen and even filter what you put there. So, I mean, that's a very fine line these days, isn't it? I mean, I really like what
And
you answered.
unfortunately, your guests don't make that differentiation when they search your name, because let's say they had an incident in your restaurant or in your hotel. When they search your name afterwards, they don't think, oh, that's the private Instagram account and they can be goofy there, and that's the professional one. They just take everything into consideration to confirm their opinion about you. So you need to be very careful, and coming back to your authenticity and your role out there on the internet. For everybody, you should be in the role of a hospitality leader and showcase exactly that with your digital footprint.
Yeah. I remember during the COVID epidemic, I had another show with a friend of mine. It was called Hospitality Talks, and I got frequently comments from my American guests who were top corporate leaders, and I was wearing a suit and bow tie, and they started to make some kind of funny remarks because they were in kind of their country club T-shirt and so on. Well, they asked me why are you wearing in the morning these kind of clothes? I said, well, actually, it's out of respect to you. It's not about me. It's about you. So I just want to show up my best version of myself, because it's going to be online and for the world to see. So I think there's a little bit something I have picked up over the years on that.
Exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned you have written a book that maybe touches hospitality leaders and you can pick up on. And in your book, you emphasize the importance of first and lasting impressions. What's one surprising insight about human psychology that most hospitality leaders overlook that they should pay attention to?
Well, first, if I may answer, I'll give you two answers. First, the book is based on what I call the ABCDE framework. To understand that, the A stands for your appearance, the way you look, the B for your behavior, the way you interact, the C for your communication, the way you communicate, the D for your digital footprint, the digital breadcrumbs you leave behind, and the E for your environment, the living and the non-living things that you surround yourselves. And those are the 5 factors we all create a presence or imprint on others on a first impression. The most surprising insight that most hospitality leaders overlook. Sam-Erik, if I would give you a list of 30 items to memorize right now, 30 items on a list, okay? And in 5 minutes, I would ask you, which of those 30 items would you most likely still remember? What do you think? Which one would that be?
If you give me 30 items, I think I would memorize something that relates to myself, that I think about myself most likely. I will take that as a cue.
But if it would be random items. None of them would be related to you. Random words.
Then it would be something, considering my personality, I would looking at as what are some positive attributes of something that I would think about.
Yes, yes. Usually, in terms of the order, it would be something at the beginning and the end. Right? Usually, if you have a long list of things to memorize, and if we don't focus on the content or of the purpose of the list, people remember from a long list the words at the beginning and at the end. Would you
Yes,
agree?
yes, I would think so. Yes.
Yeah. It's a psychological effect that we know that the brain puts energy at the beginning and at the end into a process, and in the middle just saves energy. And I don't want to say goes to sleep, but goes to rest. And why is this important for hospitality leaders? The first and the lasting impression of a stay in your restaurant or in your hotel is what guests will remember the most. So, how do you welcome them, for example, sets the tone for the entire experience. And this is a huge opportunity for you. I talk a lot about in my book, The Image of Leadership for Hospitality, about how unconscious biases in a guest's brain look for confirmation because they want to be right. And the same is true for the last impression at the very end. The things that the brain remembers the most is how you let them go will determine if they come back. And I think that part of human psychology is incredibly important for hospitality leaders, because those beginning moments and those ending moments are processes where they have a lot of control during the check-in and the check-out moment, more control that they possibly have also in the middle when guests are just in, for example, the guest room.
Yeah, yeah. You have highlighted how environments plays a major role in shaping perceptions. What's the most overlooked aspect of creating a positive physical environment in hotels? Because you must be traveling to hotels
Mhm.
on speaking engagements and so on. But just as a frequent traveler, could you maybe
Yeah,
share your views on that?
yeah. Well, as I just said, the beginning of the experience, I think that most, let's say, hotels do a great job focusing on the lobby design and front desk interactions, which is important because it sets a tone. I'm always surprised how few hotels realize that the guest experience actually already begins before we step into your hotel. You know, uh, the parking lots, the drop-off zones, all those outside impressions that I make before I enter. And I often feel that those areas feel incredibly cold and transactional and purely functional, like dead zones, like they don't belong to the hotel. And there would be so many opportunities for those, those moments of surprise or those moments of delight that I use in my presentations. Just imagine we would park in front of a hotel and there are all signs over the parking spot that says something like, park your worries here and we will take care of the rest.
Yeah.
Or the greenery. There would be signs like something, I don't know, these flowers bloom just for you.
Hmm.
Little things outside already. Or imagine I drive my car into the valet and the ticket is not just an old or cheap ticket with a number that they give me. It says something nice and welcoming to me. I think there are a lot of small opportunities outside of your property that feel or a lot of opportunities that you could use to start the guest experience already before they step into your property. Because for me, as I said, they always feel very functional and very transactional. And I think there are a lot of chances that you can make them feel more welcoming and more human and more delightful.
Absolutely. I mean, you're so right. I mean, if we take these how hotel chains and their standardization has evolved over the years, it has been sort of a mechanical because we want to
Yeah.
make sure that no surprise is the best surprise, and basically then we lose the sense of the warm welcome, and also in the sense of designing the hotels. You're so right. It's amazing if you can create a surprise effect when you're arriving. You drive through a forest and so on, then you arrive, and there's something inspiring,
Yeah.
and it starts with maybe a warm smile, even that people who greet you in the beginning, and and I love to see the time when we are able to know the name of the guest before they arrive, and not just
Mhm,
by
mhm,
looking at the computer, but we used to do
mhm,
in the analog age. We used to look at the luggage tags when they
mhm.
were existing still, but those are the
Yeah,
small
yeah,
moments that definitely makes a huge difference in
huge
people's mind.
difference.
At least they get at ease that they have
Yeah,
noted and they recognize me and they make me feel welcome. That's a
yeah.
terrific thing. And then obviously the lasting impression is so important, and that's where actually the whole whole experience can get terrific, or can be an ice cold shower when you're
Mhm,
dealing with
mhm.
somebody who has been working all night as a cashier, and then have 1 hour left before they leave their shift tired, and then the guest is coming on the way to pay for the bill, and there's a small argument evolving because did you really drink that Coca-Cola or didn't you?
Yeah,
So those
yeah.
are and that's a real life of every day. But I think kind of delightment of guests. I mean, that makes a huge difference, and it actually will solve many problems. In fact,
Mhm,
which could become bigger. But I think there's
mhm.
much more work needed, and things the way you are looking at out of the box. And I love the way you are looking at what you can do before the arrival and or during the arrival that makes it
Mhm.
extra special. That's
Yeah,
nice.
I remember one hotel in Colorado. There are two things that I remember. First, there was a bench in. I had a view on that bench from my hotel room, and I was always wondering why are people sitting on that bench, right? But I only saw the back of that bench. It was just a bench in the middle of nowhere, and I could look down. Until the next day, when I walked to the conference, I walked to the bench, along the bench, and the bench said something. It was printed on the bench, something like "Sit here" or "Pause here." You are exactly where you are supposed to be, or where you
Nice.
need to be. And people just sat down there, and I found that beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
nice.
then I remember when I checked out, I got a little chocolate, and I don't remember exactly what the chocolate said, but it was something. It was printed on like it's a sweet but sorrow goodbye, uh, but not forever. Please come back, or something like
Mm,
that, right? So it was those small details that made me feel like this property really cared. It had so many human small touches. And I will always go back because I want to
yeah,
experience that again.
yeah. Um, I read about that you are involved with the National Speakers Association.
Mhm.
And what is the biggest lesson hospitality leaders, or maybe an important lessons hospitality leaders can learn from effective public speakers? Because that's a platform of the top professionals.
Mhm, mhm. Hmm. Uh, may I share another story with you?
Please, please.
Um, I find that speaking is such a privilege, it's such a responsibility, and I feel that in particular after one incident that I had. I don't have a TV in my home. for no particular reason. We just moved into this house and never installed the TV. And then after a few months, we realized, oh my God, we forgot to install the TV, and then realized maybe we don't even need a TV. So when I watch a movie, it is a very intentional choice. I download something or I rent something, but we never have a TV on here just running. And one day I decided to watch a movie. And I'm not sure if you ever had this, but after downloading it or renting it, after 5 minutes, I already thought to myself, oh, I think this is going to be bad. And after 15 minutes, I knew it was a wrong choice. It's going to be a bad movie. And after 30 minutes in or so, I knew, oh God, it's going to be such a bad movie. But at one point, I was so far in that I thought, oh, well, now I'm just going to watch it to the end. And, Sam-Erik, after 90 minutes watching this movie, I was so angry at myself. I was so disappointed in myself because I just lost 90 minutes of my lifetime that I will never get back. I just wasted 90 minutes of my entire lifetime and I will never get it back. And every single time I step on stage now, I remind myself of that movie and those 90 minutes, and I do the math. I calculate there are 1,000 people out there and I have 45 minutes of time. I'm stealing 45 minutes out of 1,000 people's life. That is quite a responsibility.
Yes.
I better make it worth their while, every single minute. And I feel hospitality leaders should think in a similar way. You are also borrowing lifetime. Your guests are coming for different reasons to your hotel and your properties or into your restaurants or wherever, but they are spending time in there. And time is the most valuable gift somebody can give you. It's not the money, actually, I find. It's every single minute that they gift you with. And I hope that you and your team, your staff, and your entire leadership feels the responsibility and the privilege to take care of that time that they bring to your properties.
That's a very insightful way of speaking. I really love how you put it, because this is we have only one chance. That cliche is about we have only one chance to make that first impression. And many guests are coming to a hotel for the first time, and they will decide, is this the place I want to come back again? Was it? It wasn't the money, but it was it? Did I have a time where I where it made a bit difference in my life that I stayed there, and I would like to have that experience again. So, and that is something that we have to remind ourselves continuously as professionals, whether it's in a situation where we are serving breakfast as one of the staff, and or we are, how can we delight them just for that moment? And if you remember a little bit about the guests when they come the next day for breakfast, that we can actually give them something that they feel pampered. That makes a huge difference for people when they're spending their time. And time is the most. I'm glad I know another person now besides myself who don't have a TV. I think it's a very good thing. And then we have to make wise choices when you choose movies now.
Yes, a wise choice. And it's very protective to not hear the news every single day and intentionally choose what you want to know, what is going on out there.
Yes, Sylvia. Well, Sylvia, it has been really a great pleasure that you have joined me today. And if people are interested to find more about your activities, and how can they do so? Do you have a list where your speaking engagements are? Where can they find a book if they would like to start to read more in detail about your very excellent tips that you already talked about in our episode?
Oh, thank you very much for asking, Sam-Erik. I appreciate that. Well, you find me on my website, sylviedigiusto.com. Just try to put in my rather complicated name into Google and it might pop up. You find me everywhere on social media, on all platforms. Please connect. And if you do so, then send me a private message that you come from this fantastic show and I'm a friend of Sam-Erik. And you find all of my books on Amazon in the United States, but also in Europe. And if I may, then I recommend you to check out the Image of Leadership for Hospitality. It is a special edition that I dedicated to all the wonderful leaders and professionals I had the pleasure of serving throughout the past 15 years in the hospitality industry. And I would love to hear what you think about it.
Wonderful. That's a very good ending to this. And so thank you very much, Sylvia, for joining today. I appreciate you joining. This has been a highlight for me to have you and an honor to have you as my guest.
Thank you very much for having me, Sam-Erik. What a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Social Hotelier. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. We have incredible lineup of guests coming your way in the future, so stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations. Until next time, take care and keep exploring.